In a kingdom full of happiness and joy, the king and queen lived. They dreamed of only one thing, to have a child. When they had already lost all hope, their daughter was born. She was very sweet and beautiful. On this occasion, a great celebration was arranged, and many guests were invited to the palace, among whom were good sorceresses. They were given the warmest, most cordial welcome. But the king and queen made a big mistake. They forgot to invite another sorceress. She had not left her tower for many years, and everyone thought that she had died long ago. When the time came to give gifts to the princess, the fairies generously rewarded her with beauty, a kind heart, intelligence, a beautiful voice, the ability to dance and play various musical instruments. When the turn came to the last sorceress, an evil fairy, whom they forgot to invite to the holiday, unexpectedly entered the hall. Cutlery was immediately brought for her, but she felt that she was not received as respectfully as she should have. Pulling the goblet and plate away from her, she muttered a spell. The sorceress wished that on the day of her 16th birthday, the princess pricked her hand with a spindle, and from this she died. The queen wept bitterly at the wish of the evil sorceress, and the king ordered to seize the witch. But she had already disappeared with an ominous laugh. Fortunately, the last of the fairies has not yet had time to say her wish to the princess. She could not undo the spell, but promised that the girl would not die, but would only fall asleep deeply until she was awakened by the kiss of love. The king immediately ordered the destruction of all spindles in the kingdom. And then came the day of the princess's 16th birthday, the day that the evil fairy spoke about. The princess grew up to be a beautiful and kind girl. The king ordered 3 sorceresses to watch over her. Fairies guarded her like the apple of an eye. On this day, the king and queen locked the girl in a room to prevent a terrible event. But the princess did not want to be locked up. Suddenly, a door appeared in the wall of her room, which the girl had never seen. She heard strange sounds outside the door. Burning with curiosity, and not knowing what awaited her, the girl entered her. The door led into a dark room in which a woman was sitting with her back to the princess. She was spinning. The girl had never seen a spindle in her life. She became curious. The princess went to the spindle, touched it, pricked her finger and fell into a deep sleep. And that woman turned out to be an evil fairy who was very happy that her spell had come true. Now everyone called the princess Sleeping Beauty. Upon learning of the misfortune, the kind sorceress decided to put the king and queen and the whole kingdom to sleep until the girl awakens. Soon, such impenetrable thickets of trees and thorny bushes grew around the castle that no one could get through such a thicket. 100 years later, a handsome prince from another kingdom went hunting. Seeing from afar the towers of the abandoned castle, he remembered the old story about the Sleeping Beauty that his parents had told him. And the prince decided to get inside. He struggled to make his way through the impenetrable thickets of trees and thorny bushes. But in the end, the prince approached the gates of the abandoned castle. He walked around the entire castle, and looked into the throne room. There the prince saw the king and queen sleeping. Then, in one of the rooms, he noticed Sleeping Beauty. She was sleeping on a bed decorated with flowers. The prince went to the bed, looked at the beautiful princess, and felt love fill his heart. He could not restrain himself and kissed Sleeping Beauty. And at that moment, she opened her eyes and saw a handsome prince. The king and queen also woke up, as did the whole kingdom. They were overjoyed. And in honor of the bride and groom, the most beautiful wedding that the world has ever seen was arranged right there. Since then they have lived happily ever after.
Not having stayed at home for a week, Lemuel Gulliver set off on another trip on the ship Good Hope. But after a few days the ship was overtaken by the pirates. They hijacked the ship and tied up the entire crew. Gulliver tried to escape, so as punishment, the pirates dropped him in a boat to the will of the waves and winds.
Oh no!
For a long time Gulliver circled the open ocean, until he noticed land on the horizon. He swam to the shore and began to survey the land.
What?
Suddenly a huge shadow covered the sun. Raising his head, the astonished Gulliver saw a large island soaring in the sky. Exhausted by hunger and thirst, Gulliver began to scream, waving his hat, hoping that the inhabitants of the island would notice him. Then the natives took pity on Gulliver and lowered the stairs, so that he could climb the island. When Gulliver climbed the stairs, he found a crowd of very strange locals in front of him. Their heads were tilted to the right or left, with one eye looking inward and the other upward. And at each noble person there was a servant who patted the owner on the lips or ears, distracting him from his thoughts. Gulliver received a warm welcome.
Nice.
He was fed in the palace and even had a tour of the island. So, Gulliver realized that the earth soars in the sky due to a huge magnet, and at the base there is a giant diamond.
Okay.
But life in the Flying Kingdom was boring, so Gulliver soon returned to Earth. Before his eyes was a devastated country where local residents, dressed in rags, were starving. As it turned out, these people did everything in their lives the other way around. They built a house starting from the roof. They tried to get the sun's rays from cucumbers.
What?
And the artists were blindly mixing paint for paintings. Local scientists did not understand why words are needed in a language. After all, to everyone who began to argue, they simply cut out the brains and swapped them. Gulliver's surprise knew no bounds, and he hastened to leave the island. Going to neighboring lands, Gulliver found himself in the kingdom of darkness and gloom. Trembling with fear, he continued his journey. Suddenly a ghost appeared from the darkness. In fright, Gulliver tried to hide, but the spirit noticed him. He beckoned the traveler with a gesture, and Gulliver had no choice but to follow the ghost. Very soon they reached a large castle, and Gulliver was invited to a reception with the king. Walking through the castle, Gulliver saw hundreds of ghosts who cooked dinner, cleaned and guarded the chambers. It turned out that this country is ruled by a powerful sorcerer who can raise the dead. And all the living dead serve him. The wizard received Gulliver with honors. And to entertain such a rare guest, he began to revive anyone whom Gulliver asked. They were great warriors, sages, and even primitive people. But tired of wandering, Gulliver thanked the wizard and soon left the kingdom of darkness. He went to the nearest port, where he hoped to board a ship bound for England. Walking around the port, Gulliver immediately attracted attention. A foreigner in such places was a rarity, and therefore Gulliver was mistaken for a spy, seized and urgently taken to the local ruler. The foreigner was immediately found guilty. And as punishment, Gulliver had to crawl across the throne room on his stomach, licking the floor in his path. This was the custom. At the end, Gulliver bowed to the monarch 7 times, hitting his head on the floor. Then the governor looked thoughtfully at Gulliver, and then pardoned him. Miraculously freed, Gulliver ran out of the castle, and went to the nearest port, where he boarded an English ship. I must say that Gulliver never returned to these parts.